Hi everybody, I'm Chef Ben and this is Dinner with Ben, episode 3. Today we are doing Greek chickpea salad, we're doing pork chops with thyme, we're doing lemon and garlic mashed potatoes, green beans, and caramel bananas over ice cream. I'm super excited. I'm just going to give it a few minutes for people to get here. And in the meantime, I'm going to share it on my Facebook. I recommend you do the same. I'm having trouble finding. There we go. Hello, hello, hello. Okay. Yeah, we'll just wait 2 or 3 minutes to get started, and then we'll jump right in. Okay? So just kind of go over the list, make sure you have everything, and then we'll get going. Why can't I see this? Computers. Sorry guys, just a second. I can't see who's here. Okay, in the meantime, while I'm waiting for my computer to load, let's turn on our ovens to 400 degrees. Okay? Okay. Hello, Kat. Nice to see you back. Thank you for coming. All right, so I just turned the oven on to 400 degrees. If you guys want to go ahead and do the same. And like I said, today we are making chickpea Greek salad. We're making pork chops. We're making lemon and garlic potatoes, some green beans, and bananas with caramel sauce. I'm very excited. So the first thing we need to do is turn our oven on, and then we need to get our potatoes peeled and in a pot. While the potatoes and the pork chops are cooking, we'll throw together our Greek salad, and then we'll finish with our dessert. So hopefully this will be a slightly quicker episode than the other two, but either way, at the end you still get a delicious meal, so it's all good. Okay, let's get our potatoes going. So all we're going to do is peel them, and I just have these little guys right here. You can use a russet potato for this. We're using white potatoes. You don't want to use like a Yukon Gold or something waxy because it'll get too gummy. So we're just going to peel. And what we're making, I called it lemon and olive oil potatoes, but really it's something called scordelia, which is a Greek potato. It goes very, very well with lemon, or with lamb rather. And so we're going to peel the potatoes, get them in here, and then we're going to cook them with garlic. And then instead of mashing them with cream and butter or milk and butter, we're going to mash them with lemon juice and olive oil. And it's a really nice alternative to regular mashed potatoes, a lot less fatty, and just nice in the summer. It's nice and light compared to regular mashed potatoes. So we're all going to peel. Is everybody with me? If you're just coming in, I have my oven turned on to 400 degrees, and all we're doing is peeling our potatoes to start. Okay? So if you're cooking, turn your oven on to 400 and start peeling some potatoes. And again, these are just white potatoes. I don't recommend using a yellow potato like a Yukon Gold or something like that because it's way too starchy. And generally, for something like this, I recommend like 1.5 to 2 potatoes per person. But I mean, if you don't like a lot of potato, don't make a lot of potato. That's up to you. Thanks, Wendy. I have air conditioning. That's why I have my oven on right now. I'm gonna start looking at the weather forecasts when I make these menus and try and plan with the weather, because nobody wants to heat their house up. Yes, I am spoiled, Wendy. So I should say, Wendy said you're a rock star for having my oven on in a Nova Scotia heat wave. I should also say that being a chef, I'm very, very used to working in hot kitchens. So it's really not that big a deal for me, but I'm sure a lot of you guys out there are thinking it's a little too hot to cook. And I understand completely. Okay, so potato peels in. Oh, and I should say, I don't think I mentioned my sponsors yet. So thank you to Ashworks Cutting Boards and T North for sponsoring this show. I sincerely appreciate it. Okay, so potatoes are peeled. All I'm going to do, because they're relatively small already, I'm just going to quarter them. Okay? Quarter them, and then back in. And just as always, if you guys are falling behind or you need me to hold up for a second, just let me know, and I happily will. I don't want anybody to get lost. Thank you. The pork does look beautiful. I tried to get it from my local butcher, but she only had smoked pork chops this week. So I went to the grocery store and they actually had them on sale, and they're beautiful pork chops, so I kind of lucked out. Okay, so now I'm just going to rinse them under cold water, just to rinse off some of the excess starch. So what you want is for the water to run clear. So I rinsed mine twice, the water came out clear. So now I'm going to add hot water. Just so it's about an inch above the potatoes. You don't want to fill the pot too full because it'll boil over. But you want enough water that it's not going to cook down below the level of potatoes. So I'm going to put the potatoes on high, and I'm going to season the water with salt, a good amount. Essentially, you want the water to taste like the ocean. You want it to be salty. And a little trick I use to kind of use up excess energy is my oven vents in this back burner. So there's a vent that comes up from the oven to expel excess heat and moisture. And so if I have the oven on, I always use that back burner because it's just using excess heat that's coming out anyway. So I'm using less of the burner. That's a little tip, I guess. So I'm just going to rinse my knife off, get the potato starch off of there. Now we're going to start the pork. So I mean the potatoes, oh no, I lied. We're going to put some garlic on the potatoes. Sorry guys. So I just have an entire bulb of garlic. I'm just going to break it apart. We're going to take 2 cloves. These ones are nice sizes. So I'm just going to... There's 2 parts of the garlic. There's the root and the stem. The root is obviously down here, stem up here. All we're going to do is take these 2 cloves and cut the root end off. Okay? We're going to separate them. We're going to take the side of our knife, blade pointing away from us, put our hand down, and just push down with a little force. Almost like you're giving CPR. You don't want to slap your knife because if your hand slips, you can cut yourself. So it's really just a little bit of force down. and then the peel comes right off. But that only works if you cut the root off first. Okay, so now I have 2 cloves of garlic right in the water. And this works too if you want to make like garlic mashed potatoes with milk and cream. Just cook the garlic right in, or you can use roasted garlic. This is just an easier way to do that. Okay, so I have a nice big cast iron pan back here. I'd say it's about 12 inches in diameter. I have 3 pork chops which will fit perfectly in here. So I'm just going to turn this on to medium-high and I'm going to let it heat up for about probably 4 or 5 minutes. So my stove goes to 9, so I'm going to turn it on to about 6, 6.5, and just let that heat up. Now, the reason why we let pans heat up, and if you read my blog post this morning, you already know this, but the reason why we let pans heat up is because the meat has amino acids in it. And when it hits a hot pan, those caramelize and they brown. It's called the Maillard reaction. And when they brown, they release from the pan. So it not only develops flavor, but it also prevents them from sticking. So if we started these in a cold pan, as the pan heats up, the meat is going to cook onto it, and rather than releasing, it's just going to get stuck. So that's why we want to preheat our pan almost always, like 99% of the time. It's the same principle for barbecues or anything like that. So if you're barbecuing and you're cooking something and it gets stuck on the grill, chances are that A, you didn't let your grill heat up enough, and B, you're trying to flip it too soon. So if you just let it sit for a minute or two and then try and flip whatever it is, it'll probably release as opposed to just getting stuck and falling apart. So that's why we're going to let this heat up. If you're not using cast iron, it's not going to take nearly as long to heat up, like if you're using a stainless steel pan. So just kind of judge. I'm going to heat this up because it's cast iron. There's already fat in it, so I'm going to let this heat up until that fat starts to smoke. So it's not going to catch on fire or anything like that. It's just going to be nice and hot because we want that really nice sear when we put our pork in the pan. Okay. So we have our potatoes on. We're getting our pan hot for our pork. We might as well kind of trim our green beans while we're waiting for the pan to heat up. So I have these nice green beans that I got at the grocery store. Also, they're local, and they have, just like anything, they have a top and a bottom. This little bit here, I'm going to bring this closer. This little bit here is fine, but this end you want to cut off. So I guess it's easier to look at this. You can imagine that's the part that the leaf comes out of. You want to cut that off. And that's all we're going to do. I already washed these. So if you haven't washed yours yet, I suggest you do that. And then we're just going to trim them. And it's much easier if you take like a bunch of them and kind of line them up. And then trim them. It's a lot easier. Hi Jack, hi Chris, hi Wendy, hi everybody. Thank you for joining me. So we're just trimming our green beans, and if you have kids in the house, this is a great job for them. Get them interested in food, I guess. This is the kind of stuff I always did when I was a kid. Trim the green beans. If you get any rotten ones, just toss them. Don't bother trying to save them. Green beans. Okay, my pan's starting to smoke, so I'll just finish these last couple green beans up. And I'll get these out of the way, and my oven is ready. It's perfect. So, pan's smoking. What I'm going to do is take my pork, and I'll lay it on my cutting board. Okay? I'm going to take pepper. I'm going to take salt. Wendy asked if I ever make hodgepodge. Wendy, in all honesty, I've only ever made hodgepodge once, and it was on live television. And I did not like it. I'm not a hodgepodge fan. So, I don't have any oil in my pan because it's cast iron. If you're not using cast iron, I suggest putting a tiny little bit of oil in. I'm going to put seasoned side down. You can hear that sear. That's what we want, that nice sizzle. Yeah, my father-in-law Jack just said that I made it on Global News one morning. I did. It tasted alright, but it's not what I like. Hodgepodge. Okay, so I'm just going to wipe my board with hot soapy water. I know a lot of people are weird about putting raw meat on wooden cutting board. It's actually safer than using plastic. I'll finish that in a sec, but I'm just going to season the top of the pork now. So, while it's in there, I'm going to take 2 more cloves of garlic and do the exact same thing we did with the potatoes. So, wooden cutting boards are generally naturally antibacterial, and they seal naturally, especially end grain boards like this, where plastic cutting boards, they just get all these holes in them that collect bacteria, essentially, and it's really next to impossible to clean them. So in reality, as weird as it may seem, wood is actually much better for raw meat and chicken and stuff like that, because it's easier to clean, it's easier to keep clean, and it naturally is going to seal, and it's naturally antibacterial. So don't be afraid to use raw meat on a wooden cutting board. Wendy says that hodgepodge should just taste like the fresh garden. It should, but all the cream and dairy and everything, it's just a little too much, isn't it? So, because my pan is already really hot, these have only been in there for like a minute, but you can see, hopefully you can see the color on them. So now I'm going to flip them. And that's flavor, right? So you saw they didn't stick. I didn't add any oil to the pan. Yeah, so I'm just going to crush these cloves of garlic. I'm going to pop them right in here. I'm going to take my fresh thyme. If you're using dry thyme, it's fine. You can add it now as well. I'm just going to put them in here. I'm going to take, I think I wrote a cup or 2 of chicken stock on the ingredients list, but really maybe like a 1/4 cup max. So I'm going to put that in here. Yeah, that was about a 1/2 cup. And I'm going to take about a tablespoon of butter. We're just going to put that right in there. And now because this is cast iron and it's oven safe, this whole thing is going in the oven. Now, if you don't have an oven safe pan, transfer the pork to a casserole dish, pour the sauce over the top, and then just pop it in the oven. It's not going to take long because we've already seared it, so it's already like probably 1/4 of the way cooked on either side. So we're looking at probably 15 minutes max, especially with all that liquid in there. And what's going to happen is that liquid is going to reduce down, and that butter is going to cause it to thicken up. The garlic is going to essentially turn to mush, and so we're going to get this really nice, flavorful, concentrated sauce. It's going to be really good. Now we could have added wine to that or anything like that, but chicken stock works just as well. Okay, so the potatoes are just starting to boil. They're going to be a little while. And in the meantime, let's get our salad going. Actually, before we do that, let's get a pot of water on. For our green beans, we're not going to cook them yet, but we'll just get the water boiling. So we're just going to start with like 1/2 pot of water. And salted water. Okay, so the salad. This is essentially just going to be a Greek salad, but with chickpeas instead of lettuce. really nice alternative to just your regular everyday salad. Stores really well. It's really great for lunches, anything like that. So first thing we have to do is open up a can of chickpeas. If you're using dried chickpeas, I hope you're not right now, but you would have had to soak them overnight, boil them, and cool them. This is much easier. And now I'm just going to drain them. So the liquid that's coming out of this can be used as an egg substitute. Most people don't know that, but you can whip it just like egg whites. You can make mayonnaise with it. You can do all kinds of stuff. So if you know anybody who's vegan or if you have egg issues, you can use the liquid from chickpeas or any kind of canned bean in place of eggs in a lot of recipes. So we're just going to drain this. Then I'm just going to take a strainer and kind of rinse them out. Just under cold water. I'm just going to set those aside and let them drain for a minute. In the meantime, we're going to take our bowl. Oh, Wendy said she just lost internet and missed the meat. Wendy, all I did was sear it in the pan really quickly, added thyme, butter, and garlic, chicken stock, and then popped it in the oven. But yeah, if you want to watch the video later, it's a pretty quick segment. So in here, in this bowl, I'm going to add about 2 tablespoons of red wine vinegar. Unlike the last 2 episodes, we're not actually making a vinaigrette. We're not gonna emulsify this. We're gonna add just the vinegar and the oil together, and we're gonna add olive oil or canola, depending on what you have. If your olive oil has a bitter taste, don't use it, please. And we're gonna add about 2 tablespoons of olive oil as well. Okay. Then we're gonna add a little bit of pepper. We're going to add a nice big pinch of salt. And then we're just going to mix that up. Now, because, I don't know if you can see that, I hope you can, it's not emulsified, right? So you can see the separation of the oil and the vinegar. That's fine. I'm not worried about it. It's okay. So, we're going to take 2 cloves of garlic. Again, everything's got 2 cloves of garlic. I'm just going to set this aside. And again, we're going to cut the ends off. We're going to crush them. Again, if you're falling behind or if you're just kind of on something else, just let me know and I can hold up for a sec. It's not the end of the world. Okay. Potatoes are boiling, that's good. So we have 2 cloves of garlic, and all we're going to do is just really roughly chop them. Fairly small, but don't worry about getting them exactly the same size because we're going to do something else. So just rough chop them. The smaller the better, but again, don't worry too much about it. Okay, so rough chop, and then we're going to take a nice big pinch of salt. If you're just using table salt, this will be a little more difficult for you. I have coarse kosher salt, or if you have sea salt, anything coarse is better for this, but any kind of salt will do. And you want a nice, decent pinch of salt on here. Now, the salt's going to do 2 things. It's going to absorb all the liquid that we're squeezing out of the garlic, and it's also going to act like an abrasive between our knife and the cutting board. So the technique here is very important that you pay attention because a lot of people get confused by this, but once you see it, hopefully you'll get the hang of it. So what you're going to do is you're going to keep your knife flat. You're not going to tilt it up like that or down like that. You're just going to keep it as flat as you can, and you want your handle to kind of hang off the edge of your board. So and your board needs to not move. So if you're just using a regular cutting board and you don't have anything under it, get a damp piece of paper towel or a damp towel and put it under your board, and that will secure it. It won't slide around on you. And then you want your arm, or the handle of your knife, kind of dangling off the side of your board. And all you're going to do is start on the edge of your garlic. So you have your mound of garlic. You want to start right on the edge of it. You don't want to start in the middle. You want to start right on the edge. And then you're just going to put your knife down and you're going to pull. It's not going to take much force. You're just going to put it down and pull, put it down and pull, and then work your way into the center of the garlic. And what's going to happen is, again, the salt is going to act like an abrasive between your knife and the board, and you're going to puree the garlic. But once you get the hang of this, you will do this quicker than it'll take you to clean your garlic press. And I don't know if I've shown you this yet, but it's still really valuable to know. So just like that quickly, I have pureed garlic. See how quick that was? So again, the technique is you want to use the flat edge of your knife. You want to keep your knife flat. You're just going to put it right on the edge of the mound of garlic, and you're going to pull. And you move it back, and you're going to pull just like that. Okay? So your knife should always be flat. And then we're just going to add that in to our dressing. Okay, next step. We're just going to add about a quarter teaspoon of dried oregano. And about a half a teaspoon of dried oregano. And now we're just going to mix this up. And we'll give it a little taste. There you go. That's essentially Greek dressing. So, next step is we got to get our veg in there. So we're going to start with the tomatoes. There's a little hair on my lip. We're going to start with the tomatoes because as they sit in the vinegar is going to pull some of the juice out of them, and that's going to add to our sauce. So what we're going to do is take these and just quarter them. I think my cat is hot. She's laying on her belly underneath the fan, just kind of completely sprawled out. I would show you, but if I move the camera, I'm never going to get the angle right again. But she's very adorable. You can take my word for it. Okay, so I'm probably not going to use all of these tomatoes. You can if you want. I have these beautiful kind of heirloom tomatoes that I got at the farmer's market on Saturday. Whatever you have is fine. But anything like this, if you can get multicolored tomatoes, it adds to the visual appeal of it. Even if they have kind of the same flavor. Was that all for Brenda? I hope it was. Brenda is my cat, by the way. So Darren McKinnon just asked if I always boil my vegetables with lids off. So generally, yes. Any green vegetable, if you put a lid on the pot, it's going to cause the vegetables to discolor, and they're going to go that weird kind of gray-green color. There's a chemical that's released when green vegetables are cooked, which is what causes them to discolor. So any green vegetable, I always leave uncovered. And yes, generally I don't boil things with lids on them, just for whatever reason. I often bring the pot to a boil with a lid on it, but then I'll remove it. Pots come to a boil 30% quicker with a lid on them. But other than that, I kind of like to see what's going on in the pot. But that's just personal preference. But again, with any green vegetable, don't cook with a lid on. Okay, I think this is about going to do it for tomatoes. Here we go. And we're just going to give those a nice little toss. And hopefully you can see that in there. and we'll check our potatoes. So I'm just going to take a fork. They're almost done, but I'm going to let them go for another 2 or 3 minutes. And I'm just going to turn the water down for the peas, or beans rather. So I have a red onion. I am definitely not going to need this whole thing. I'm probably not even going to use half of it. So I'm just going to kind of cut it just off center. I'm going to cut the top and the bottom off. And then just peel it. And now we're just going to do a really thin slice on the onion. You want it as thin as you can get it. Partly because no one wants to bite in, not no one, but most people don't want to bite into a big chunk of red onion. But also, as the onion sits in the vinegar, the vinegar is going to kind of break it down, and the thinner the onion is, the quicker that's going to happen. And so it'll kind of tenderize it a bit and take some of the sharpness away. So all we're going to do is hold our knife in our most comfortable grip, as high on the handle as is comfortable for you. Hold our fingers flat with our thumb and pinky behind. Knife always in contact. And just as thin as you can get it. Okay? So you can see how thin that is, I hope. And we're just going to pop that in. And I'm not even going to use this whole thing, because that's a lot of onion in here. So that should be enough. And we're just going to break up all the little slices. Throw them in there like that. And then give that a toss. So I'm just going to drain my potatoes while you guys are finishing that up. And they're done. I poked them with a fork. I'll do it again. So I poke them with a fork and they fall apart. And they're definitely done. So I'm just going to drain these. And now I'm going to let them sit there for like 2 or 3 minutes. And you can probably see all the steam coming off, so that's moisture evaporating from the potatoes. If I just pour them in the pot and mash them up right now, the potatoes are going to be super wet and soggy. This way they're going to kind of dry, and it's going to give you a creamier potato as opposed to like a mushy potato. So I recommend always... Hi Carol. Carol just said hello. Hi Carol. So I recommend always letting your potatoes steam dry for at least 3 or 4 minutes before you mash them. In the meantime, we're going to cut up our cucumber. This is a giant cucumber. I'm going to use about that much of it. I'm just going to cut the end off, cut it in quarters, and then slice it. Not too thin, but you don't want it too thick either. This is probably about a ½ centimeter. And we'll do the same thing. So I'm just taking both of my quarters, or 2 of my quarters, putting them together. And so what I'm doing is I'm not chopping, I'm not coming down on it, I'm slicing through, kind of like that. So the knife is kind of going like this. It's not being forced down. And that's really important, no matter what you're cutting really, is you always want to kind of slice. You don't ever want to... There are some situations where you want to do that, mostly if you're chopping like herbs or something like that. But generally, you want to just slice. You don't want to come down with a lot of force. Just going to pop that in here. Give that a toss. And if you look in the bottom of your bowl, there's a lot more moisture than there was before, which is all the juice coming out of the tomatoes. Now some's going to come out of the cucumbers. And I'm going to add my chickpeas in. And you can see how beautiful that is, hopefully. And now back to the potatoes. Okay, lemon. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our lemon and we're just going to roll it. Okay, you don't want to put too much force into it, it'll explode. We're just going to roll it. And if you, again, read my blog post this morning, then you know that we're not going to cut it through the center this way like people normally would. Instead, we're going to cut it north to south and off center. So what that looks like is like this. Okay? Then we're going to turn it around and we're going to do the same thing. So now we have this, and then we're going to cut. So we have that. Okay? I'm just going to take a trivet and bring my potatoes over. And again, so these have the garlic in them, and you can see kind of how white they are. That's just because I allowed them to steam dry and let some of that moisture come out. So if you have seeds in your lemon like I do, squeeze it up, not down. And that way you can kind of collect the seeds as opposed to just dropping them right in your potatoes. And I guess the reason why we do this, I didn't really explain, is when you cut a lemon like this, you're working with the natural structure of the lemon as opposed to fighting it like you would if you cut it across the equator. And you get way, way, way more juice out of it. If you have a juicer, then obviously just do it the way you normally would, but if you're doing it by hand, this is much easier and much more efficient. So we're just going to squeeze all the juice out of here. And if you have any little cuts on your hands, you're going to know about it, but this is pretty good for them. It'll sanitize them a little bit. And then we're just going to take that centerpiece and same thing, just squeeze it out, making sure not to get any seeds in there. Okay, and then this can go in the compost. And we're going to add about 2 to 3 tablespoons of olive oil in here. We want a nice, decent amount. We're going to add salt and pepper. Are we back? I think I just lost the video feed. Are we back? Hold on. Should be live. Guys, I don't know what's happening. You see it? Okay, so it is going. Hold on, I'm going to refresh my computer. Sorry guys. Okay. So it is working. I'm going to refresh my computer. In the meantime, I don't know what you missed. So I have, in here I have the juice of 1 lemon. I have 2 to 3 tablespoons of olive oil. I have pepper, and now a bit of salt. And I'm just going to mash this up. Perfect. Hello, Miss Anita. How are you? Thank you for coming. So I'm just going to mash these up. And you may need to add a little more olive oil to them. You may need to add a little more lemon juice. But they're going to be nice and flavorful and something a little bit different than your regular mashed potatoes. So mine, you can see, are still kind of mealy and dry. So I'm going to add a bit more olive oil to them. That's better. So now you can see they have a much nicer texture. We'll give them a little taste. Beautiful. So it's just a nice little hint of lemon. Kind of get you right in the front of your mouth when you first bite into it. You get that garlic at the end. Very nice. So now I'm going to put a lid on the pot, and I'm just going to set it right back here on that burner that's venting. Right? So the one when I talked about in the beginning, how one of your burners vents from the oven. I'm just going to put the potatoes there, and it's going to keep them warm for a while. Hi Bob, thank you very much. Bob says that he loves my food ideas. I appreciate that, Bob. Thank you very much. I'm going to check the pork now. We'll see how that's doing. So that looks pretty nice to me. I hope you can see that. And that pork is done. So if you watched last week, you probably remember the finger test. So the way this works is if you open your hand and just relax it, and you kind of poke right here, right in the meaty part of your thumb, that's about a rare kind of New York strip loin or a rare pork chop. If you put these two fingers together, that's mid-rare, then you have medium, medium well, and well. So for the pork, we're looking for kind of like a mid-well, and that's where we're at, which is perfect. So I'm going to turn my oven off, hopefully cool it down in here a little bit. We're going to take the pork out of the pan with my tongs. Now we're going to let this rest. So the reason we let meat rest is that as it heats up, heat is obviously the molecules moving around very quickly. So as we let it rest, the molecules are calming down, and the juices within the pork, the fats and everything else, are redistributing throughout the meat. So if I cut into these right now, all the juice is going to pour out of them. If I let them rest for 5 to 10 minutes, they're going to stay juicy, and all of that flavor and all that liquid is going to stay in them. Then when we bite into them, that's when we get the juice, not when we cut into it. So I'm just going to set these aside, let them rest. And my sauce is already thick enough. I don't really need to thicken it anymore. If yours is a little runny, then just heat it up. Okay, so just turn your burner on, heat it up, bring it to a boil, and then it should be thick enough. So I'm just going to let that sit. Make sure you don't touch your handle. A good idea is to put a towel over it. Okay, and now I'm just going to turn the bean water back up, and I'm going to boil my beans. So that water is already boiling, so I'm going to drop these in here. And they're only going to take like 2 to 3 minutes. It's not going to take long. So, our salad, I said feta cheese was optional. I have some. If you don't, it's not the end of the world. I'll show you the salad now as it looks. It's very nice salad. And so, all I'm going to do is take some feta cheese. You don't have to buy a big container of it. You can just buy like small pieces at most grocery stores. This was only $3. It's a lot cheaper than buying the big container. And I'm just going to crumble this right over the salad. And the saltiness from the cheese really adds to it. I highly recommend using it. Just like that. A little fresh mint would be very good in this as well. I have some, I don't know if I put it on the list or not, I can't remember. If I did put it on the ingredients list, then this is where the mint goes. If I didn't, then you could easily add some mint to this. So, salad is done. I'm going to set that aside. Set it over here. Rinse my hands off. Okay, so dessert. Now, For the dessert, it's usually best if you do this just before you serve it. Obviously, with time constraints, like I'm not going to sit down and eat my meal and then do the dessert. So you can do it with me now, or you can do it later. That's really up to you. It might not be a bad idea to let the caramel sit and cool down a little bit while you're eating, and then you can kind of jump right into it after dinner. So maybe that's what you want to do, maybe it's not. I don't know. Alright, so I'm going to set this aside. Just put it there. I'm going to move this pan off of here. And I'm going to bring this burner. So, medium-high heat, so we're going to go on 6 approximately. We're going to let that heat. I'm going to take 2 bananas. These are very green, and that's okay for this. If your bananas are very, very ripe, they are going to just turn to mush, which isn't what you want at all. So all we're going to do is cut these in half, lengthwise, and then we're going to cut them in half widthwise, carefully. Now I am adding booze to mine. I'm going to add some whiskey to it. If you don't have booze, it's okay. Yeah, it's not going to hurt it. You could add a little cream to it if you wanted to, but it's not necessary. Green beans are about a minute away. I'm just going to let this pan heat up. I'm going to start with about a tablespoon and a half of butter. And we want that to start bubbling before we put... Oh, it's pretty warm now. I'm going to turn that down to medium. We want all the butter melted and bubbling before we put our bananas in. It's very important. And I'm going to drain my green beans. So you can see the color of these. They're not beige. They're bright green. Yeah, they're like a forest green. That's what you want. Okay, butter melted and bubbly. Bananas in flat side down. And don't drop them in. Place them in and place them away from you. And that way if they splatter, they're going to splatter away from you. If you drop them in, they're more likely to kind of burn you. Okay, so we're just going to let those cook for a minute. And in the meantime, I will plate up my main course. I'm going to put a little bit of butter and salt and pepper over my green beans. Almost, but not quite. Okay, so first thing, I'm going to put a nice bit of scordelia, which is what this is called, lemon and olive oil mashed potatoes. We're going to take some of our green beans. We're going to cook our bananas really quickly. Okay. So you can see hopefully the color on that. about a 1/4 cup of sugar in here. Just right over the bananas. And at this point, if you're using it, booze. If you're not, then it's okay too. I'm going to put about an ounce of, about an ounce of whiskey in here. Also, if you're using a propane stove, do this away from the flame because it will blow up on you. If you're using an electric stove, it doesn't matter. Okay, pork chop. This nice one right off the bottom. And you can see too, so this is the garlic clove from the pan. Hopefully you can see that. And you can see how soft it is, how I can just smush it with my finger. And when garlic gets like that, it gets really sweet. And that's going to kind of flavor our sauce. And right over the top. So, there are the bananas. The caramel's done. If you use the whiskey, it's going to take a little longer than if you don't, because the sugar is going to caramelize quicker and you don't have to boil off the liquid. But this is perfect. I'm going to set this aside, let that cool a minute. And I'm just going to add some of my Greek salad right here. Beautiful. And then a little bit for this time for garnish. So there is the main course. We have herb roasted pork chops with a pan sauce. We have lemon and garlic mashed potatoes, or scardilia as it's called, green beans, and chickpea Greek salad. Okay, so I think that's very nice. It's a nice, healthy, well-rounded dinner. And now I might as well plate up dessert as well. So what I have here is actually cashew, dairy-free ice cream. My wife can't have dairy, so I wanted her to be able to eat this as well. So all I'm going to do is as hard as a rock also. Going to rub my spoon under hot water. Oh yeah, it's real hard. So let your ice cream come to room temperature a little before you try and dig right into it. Anyway, you get the idea. Some ice cream in the bowl. Banana over the top. And a nice little bit of this nice caramel sauce. Let's give that banana a try. Oh my god. That was really, really good. Okay. Yeah. That's it. That's everything. We have our main course. Again, with our herb roasted pork chops, lemon and olive oil mashed potatoes, green beans, and chickpea Greek salad. And then we have our caramelized bananas over vanilla ice cream. Guys, thank you so much for watching. I sincerely appreciate it. Thank you to my sponsors, Ashworks Cutting Boards and T-North. Thank you so much. If you did cook along tonight, please share some pictures with me. I'd love to see it. I'll be back next week at the same time. Thank you, everybody. Have a great Monday. Have a great week, and I'll see you next week.